Okay, anybody who's been paying attention on the tubes lately is very aware that there's been a good number of exchanges over this question of agency or freedom or free will or willpower or decision making or choice. This whole range of issues have been talked about. And I wanted to get in on this and just register again how much I see this to be kind of a problematic discussion. This is a lot of people, from my perspective, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. They're trying to distance themselves from religious dogma, and in doing so, they're suggesting that there is no such thing as agency, that there is no such thing as will, or that there is no such thing as decision-making and choice. There's really just a fully deterministic universe, and everything else is just an illusion. And I want to say, look, no, it's much more complicated than that. It has to do with multiple levels kind of intersecting and coming together. And I guess, just in the backdrop, and I'll leave it in the backdrop and maybe see if I can't come back to it, but just from a legalistic standpoint, so many of these discussions are just highly problematic. I mean, one has to be able to address something like choice or agency or premeditation. I mean, we do make lots and lots of legal distinctions based upon, was an action intended or accidental. Now, if we say that it was intended rather than accidental, somehow the issue of agency enters in there. And so maybe motivation, restraint, constraints, rules, all of those might be better terms than some of these that are perhaps caught in religious dogma. But whatever you call that phenomenon, I mean, when people thought that Earth was all that all of reality was earth, air, fire, and water, or whatever, earth, air, fire, and water, yeah. And instead of that, they said, oh no, well, it's the periodic chart of the elements, and then these are they're made up of these subatomic particles and stuff. We can have new ways of breaking it up, but there was an original phenomena that had new ways of talking about it, new ways of thinking about it. There is some sort of phenomena that needs to be addressed, even if it needs to be pruned of some of the, I guess, like problematic earlier understandings of what this phenomenon is. Okay, so I think one of the ways to come at the issue is to say the largest, most pervasive problem is, how does time open to itself? And by that I mean, to what extent are human beings places of nature which are open to the past and open to the future? And when I say they're open to the past, I mean they're able to experience things like remorse, guilt, regret. They're able to double think things that happened in the past and to see things that happened in the past within a retention of the context of the choice not taken. I mean, some of that is part of our experience. We also have lots of anxieties. We have anticipations and desires, and we have goals and things that we're striving toward. And those can range from, plans of what I'm going to eat later today to what I'm going to do with my life 2 weeks from now, to what kind of retirement I'm trying to plan, to, am I or am I not trying to have children, and am I preparing to leave something for them? I mean, the scale and scope of one's orientation toward the future is pretty amazing. Okay, so how does that happen? Well, what are the key issues? I think my position would be that the organisms of the world, they all have various degrees of actualizing possibilities. So the question is, what is a possibility, where and when is a possibility, and how are they managed and actualized? I think possibilities are real, and they're managed and actualized through various sensory capacities. Now, it doesn't need to be some superlative, supernatural free will, but you want to look at the different kinds of capacities within nature that we call them the senses, but they're so much more complex than that. But let's go to the first, and I'm going to sort of scale it out. So the first is touch taste. So touch taste we can imagine as a kind of immediate ground where there is some sense of possibility, but the possibility is only contact with the contiguous. It's what comes next. And touch really is kind of grounded wherever it is. And once you start to get to smell, see, now, and again, each of these senses, they rely upon the prior sense. And so as you get from touch, taste, to smell, to hearing, to sight, and ultimately on to language and speech and communication technologies. As you do that, that progression, you're seeing an expanded range of mediacies, an expanded horizon of possibilities being managed and actualized. Okay, once you get to smell, there is something like the organism's touching capacities, tasting capacities, moving toward or moving against that smell. Now, what's interesting is that I think sometimes people want to say, well, there's just biochemical processes, and then there's feelings, and those feelings are, those are part of what determine the action. Okay, well, that's true. I mean, all of those things are part of what make the action what it is, but I think to try to say that feelings are always an obstacle to free action would be wrong. No, feelings are part of what make action possible. They're part of what we call the motivations that are aligned with that experience that we call freedom, or that we call the will or the capacity to exercise one's agency. That is, cognitive dissonance is one of the most powerful and potent theories in psychology. Why does cognitive dissonance occur? How is it possible? Now, if we say that cognitive dissonance is just an illusion, why? Why would you have an illusion? Well, isn't it the case that cognitive dissonance is a symptom of our felt agency? That only an organism who is open to time and open to the experience of choice could feel cognitive dissonance, and then that feeling of cognitive dissonance is part of the willing to resolve the otherwise unresolved tensions, the incompatibilities. And so it's not that those motives are, again, obstacles to choice. They're part of what make choice possible. So again, emotion, imagination, memory, these are going to be dynamics in this sensory unfolding. So again, you have touch, taste, then smell. As you move to sound and as you move to sight, sight gives the ability to visualize elements in the distance. So I can see distant desires, and the distant becomes a kind of metaphor for the temporally removed. And so something that looks far away is like a long-term plan. I mean, there's this sort of metaphorical relation between space and time enters in with vision. And a being who can hear and who can see is going to have to flee from predators, has to decide when to hide, when not to hide, decide to again, flee or to fight. It has options about which prey to hunt down or to chase. It may have other options about, again, what to do in its immediate environment with the kinds of conditions that are in its immediate surrounding. Once you get to human language, discourse with its calendars and clocks and various forms of communication technologies where people can make lists, people can, manage and actualize possibilities in a way that apparently no other organism has to struggle with. And I mean, the argument would be that organismal anxiety, as it's experienced by humans, and I mean the suffering of despair, of anxiety, of all forms of life stress that partly come through imagined and partly real senses of upward social mobility. All of these different dynamics, these factors, they're a register. They're a concrete register of the ongoing felt and actualized experience, right, of deliberation. Now, I guess one last way to try to round this haggle out would be, if you don't think that any of that makes sense, that's fair enough. I mean, I could see somebody trying to critique it. I don't know what the critique is. Maybe a person just wants to say, well, that's not what I mean. I guess I would want to say, well, this is the baby that you need to save while you're throwing out the bathwater. You can get rid of all the dogma, but you're going to have to realize that there is something about the human experience of choice and agency that makes life so difficult, right? I mean, I think that's part of what makes life the responsible problem that it is, that humans have self-reflexive consciousness and are responsible. It's as if nature has a basic principle, and the nature is it rules and lords over those who cannot lord over themselves, and so humans have been willed into wanting a conscience. It's like nature willed the human into the continuous state of wanting to have a conscience, because humans can't legislate themselves except by all of these different dynamics conspiring together into their experiences of choice. That is, that humans have a diminished instinctual action that gets rounded out by cultural forms, cultural sensibilities about what to eat, what not to eat, where to go, when to go there, what to touch, what not to touch, where to look, what not to look, what to say, what not to be heard saying. All of these kinds of dynamics become part of our exercise and experience of self. That is, if we didn't have any agency, why would we ever experience guilt, remorse, regret over something that we did? It would be like, well, we didn't have any option to do otherwise. Some of those experiences, they wouldn't have any concrete reality to make the feelings be real. I mean, the reality of the feelings come from a sense that there were other options. If you genuinely didn't feel that you had any other options and you just were doing what only possibly could be done, there wouldn't be any of those feelings. But try to think of some cases where you restrict or you diminish those other capacities. And I think there you get to see what agency is. I mean, agency is so real. If suddenly I tried to throw, I don't know, 30-pound concrete shoes on, I could try to walk, and I could try to flee someone who's trying to chase me with all those concrete shoes on, but my capacity to exercise my desire to run, to actualize that possibility, is greatly diminished, right? I mean, those are too heavy for my feet. I could try to drive around in my car with earphones on really loud, and it might be fine. It might be a little bit dangerous. I might try to drive my car blindfolded. I think we're all going to say, yeah, this is utterly dangerous. To try to drive your car or even walk around in a public place completely blindfolded would be significantly dangerous. And why? It's because your agency is being diminished because you don't have some of those capacities for recognizing possibilities, managing them, and then actualizing them. Calendars and other forms of higher order strategies are just that logic extended out. At any rate, those are some thoughts. Hope everyone is well. Okay, bye.